California Governor Gavin Newsom has a message for President Trump. Quote, "Go after me." Earlier this week, Newsom announced he and his wife had, quote, joined Donald Trump's hit list and were now the subjects of a federal investigation. We don't know too much about this reported investigation. Newsom says federal agents are seeking, quote, random documents and interviewing associates. I caught up with the governor Thursday in Chicago. Watch.
This is stuff that happens in other countries. That's all I'll say. Happens in other countries. Who wants to go after me, go after me.
Could this all be the latest installment of Donald Trump's DOJ weaponization? Time will tell, but the president does not have a forgiving track record when it comes to going after his perceived enemies. We've seen this movie before. Donald Trump has repeatedly used government resources to settle personal scores. And he's hit a large swath of critics, former officials and political opponents and media companies, universities. The list goes on and on and on and on. And one of those recent targets is E. Jean Carroll. The former magazine writer is reportedly tied to a DOJ criminal investigation involving testimony and funding disclosures from a civil case against Donald Trump. And this comes years after Carroll successfully sued Trump for sexual abuse and defamation, winning in two separate civil trials. Trump denies any wrongdoing. Carroll's life and fight to reclaim her voice is chronicled in the documentary Ask E. Jean. Take a look.
The thing about E. Jean is that, when you're representing her, all we have to do is tell the truth.
Yeah.
This is a case where it's just so simple. I mean, you heard an argument today. Donald Trump's theory remains that he's the victim in this circumstance.
Right. Particularly in cases about sexual assault where it's so much yuck always becomes involved. It's really important that the plaintiff be convincing and persuasive and strong.
Come here. Oh. We all feel very lucky and honored to represent you and to tell your story.
So,
and then we go on.
And then we fight on.
And then we fight on.
Joining me now is Ivy Meeropol, the filmmaker behind the documentary, Meeropol, excuse me, Ask E. Jean. It's so great to have you here, and congratulations on your film.
Thank you. Somebody just asked me to pronounce it, and believe me, many people get it wrong, so I understand.
You can call me Soborov, Saborov, Sababarov.
Exactly.
Welcome to the club.
Too many O's.
Exactly. You called the making of this film wildly uncertain, and I think you said at times terrifying. Tell me more about this.
Sure. Well, I mean, the terrifying part was when I found myself in the courtroom during the first trial. I did not expect to be mentioned as become part of the questioning as E. Jean was under direct examination. So and I mean, of course, many of us experienced the kind of what I started calling the Trump effect, which is, we had a very hard time finding support for this film or finding interest in it. But then to actually, once we did, have people want to take their names off the film and really there was a real chilling effect. But being in that courtroom, I had a moment of feeling like my participation, my pursuit of E. Jean and wanting to tell her story, I was going to become part of, possibly a target because he, clearly has a vindictive streak.
I want to play another clip from the documentary, from the film, where we hear more from E. Jean Carroll herself. Everybody should watch this.
When I spoke up, I thought he would deny it and then say it was consensual. But he just called me a liar. Seeing the president, the leader of the free world, going on TV every single day for 3 days straight, calling me a liar. That I couldn't take.
I can't imagine it. Can you walk me through what it was like for E. Jean Carroll, the defamation piece of this in particular?
Sure. I mean, it began with her just as a writer expressing herself and telling her story when she was inspired by the Me Too movement and the courageous act of journalism that brought those stories forward. She decided to share her story at age 75, never intending to sue anybody. But from the White House, Donald Trump began attacking her viciously. He called her a liar. He said he'd actually never met her, even though there's a photo showing they had met, and they were certainly had crossed paths in New York City during that time. And And he went on to say, she's not my type, she's a whack job. And then that activated many of his, I guess you might say, most unhinged followers to threaten her life. And that's that his words had a real effect in creating this atmosphere where she needed protection from him.
So many people know E. Jean Carroll through television, through reading about her online or in the paper. What you have gotten to know her so intimately, what do you want audiences to know who only know E. Jean Carroll in those ways?
E. Jean is just an incredible. I wanted people to know that she not only is she's this amazing advice columnist who really encouraged women to pursue careers and pursue lives outside the home at a time when that wasn't happening as much. But she is an unabashed, joyous person who she embodies, the kind of the era of, I'm going to take on the world and I'm not going to let people define me. Now, the other side of that is what she endured as a woman of the silent generation. So it's a complex story that we get to really experience through E. Jean. But what I really want people to know about her is just she's a fighter, and that she has shown us that through that community, sisterhood, and that you can stand up to bullies and win.
What do you say to people who, in the film you really chronicle her internal debate and the decision to speak out? The people who say, why didn't you speak out sooner? I'm sure that has come up. What do you say to them?
Of course. I mean, it comes up all the time. And what we wanted to show in real detail through her conversations with her friends from the time period is how difficult, almost impossible that would have been for her as an individual, a member of the silent generation who was working very hard to establish herself in a male-dominated career, the magazine world of the 1990s, and specifically in New York City. The shame that women carry has carried even through this whole process with E. Jean, even though she knows intellectually now that there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's so deep that is the kind of thing that keeps women from coming out, because they are accused of putting themselves in positions where they kind of are asking for it, or they are deserving abuse, sexual assault, rape, whatever it is. And it's so insidious that we experience this in the film. We see it through E. Jean's experience, that she could not have even contemplated it at the time, because she couldn't even recognize herself that she'd been injured.
Well, I have to ask you, you called the criminal investigation that the Justice Department has launched against E. Jean Carroll unbelievable, yet not surprising. The news of the investigation broke about a week after your film's New York premiere. What do you make of that timing?
Yeah, I mean, it's suspicious, Jacob. I would say, people can connect the dots. I mean, it definitely came, I had an op-ed in the New York Times that came out right before our film opened in New York City. And then after it opened in New York City, within days, we heard about this, I would say, ridiculous campaign to vilify E. Jean and go after her. And I know E. Jean the E. Jean I know is an incredibly truthful person, to a fault, maybe some people might say so, because she just is who she is. And the idea that she perjured, herself, and it had already actually been adjudicated that she had not perjured herself. So this felt, timing wise, yeah, I would say it's suspicious, and he's vindictive. I mean, that's his modus operandi.
Everybody should go watch this film, Ivy Meeropol, wherever you can find it. Director and producer of the documentary Ask Jean. Hope it's distributed widely so we can all see it.